There's a core symptom of trauma that most people don't know about. It's very strong, and it can be very limiting for your life. It's not only associated with trauma, but it's almost universal in people who are traumatized as children, and it drives virtually every other trauma symptom, meaning until you've learned to identify and heal it, it's hard to change the other symptoms. And yet you may never have heard of this. It's called neurological dysregulation. And when you know about it, the possibility of healing and changing your life go way up. Not knowing about it is a big reason why people who grew up with neglect and abuse struggle to progress in their healing. Now, this is because what everyone used to believe is that trauma wounds were largely psychological. The problem was emotional, behavioral, maybe cultural. And trauma wounds are definitely partly those things. But we now know that the primary injury is neurological. That means it's in your nervous system. So how does that work? Early trauma dysregulates the brain and nervous system, potentially triggering a whole range of problems from obesity to ADHD to heart disease to addiction. And those are problems that they could happen to anyone, but they're much more common in traumatized people. It's more than that, though. For people with childhood PTSD, just being dysregulated is a problem, and it makes ordinary things in your life ridiculously hard. Things like reading a book, spending time alone, getting somewhere on time, expressing an opinion, or dealing with feeling left out. All these things can set off dysregulation. If you could see an MRI image of a brain in this dysregulated state, you'd see the front left cortex go dim and inactive, and that hampers the ability to reason and pay attention. You'd see the right front cortex flaring wildly, and that's a flood of emotions. So you have suppressed reasoning, overreactive emotions, and then it gets hard to process emotions and thoughts. So what happens is you start to feel overwhelmed. It is just building up in there. Do you ever experience that? It's not just an emotional reaction, it turns out. It's in your brain. So there's this change of activity. Brain waves are irregular, breathing and heart rate become irregular and out of sync. And there may be numbness in your hands. These are some of the symptoms you can feel. Numb in the face, a feeling of clumsiness in your feet. It can be hard to find words or complete tasks or pay attention. When I'm dysregulated, I get clumsy and trip on curbs and drop things. My handwriting changes. For a lot of us, we say things we don't mean when we're dysregulating. We do things that we regret later, almost as if we were half conscious in that moment, and we lacked the clear thinking to say no or do the right thing. Or we may grow silent and withdrawn, or we may feel desperate and act impulsively, or fly into a rage and lash out. After that kind of outburst, we may feel almost no emotion. And then what would be worse is what happens sometimes is we behave coldly to the people we've just hurt. Our affect is flat. My friend told me that when I'm upset, I have a flat affect. That's a blank expression on my face. And so it's impossible to tell from the outside what I'm feeling. I look like I don't care. When somebody tells me something like, Anna, something terrible has happened, I just go, oh. They think I don't care, but I do care. Maybe I care too much, in fact. When I'm really, really hurt or mortified, my face will stop showing what I'm feeling. Do you have any of this? It can make it so hard to connect or solve problems with people. But here's the thing. These reactions are not happening because I'm bad or anybody's bad or you're bad or selfish or weak. These reactions are happening, or they're made worse, because the brain is dysregulated. Nobody knew this before. Not doctors, not therapists. Nobody knew, but now we know. Now, for better and worse, people usually can't tell you're dysregulated by looking at you, which can be good because sometimes that's just a private thing. You want to look like you have it together. But on the other hand, when people can't see what's going on with you, you can end up getting into the habit of hiding how you really feel, where you're in this dance where people assume you're okay, you pretend you're okay. Actually, you're feeling disconnected and uncomfortable, and you're not going to have a chance to talk to them about it. Have you ever had to think really hard about how to hold your face in a weird situation so it looks like you're having the appropriate response to whatever the other person is saying? Because when you're dysregulated, it's hard to even hear what they're saying, let alone think of how you're supposed to act. Dysregulation gets activated when you're confronted with stressors and crises. And remember, it can suppress your ability to reason while it amps up your emotions. So you see how this explains so much, why those of us with childhood PTSD appear to keep making the same bad choices over and over, even when we say we're never going to do it again. And we do mean we're never going to do it again, but then you look around and there you are, you're doing it again. So I'm here to tell you, you can break this cycle. You really are capable of making good choices and good changes, and it gets way easier when you learn to re-regulate. So how do you know when dysregulation is happening? Let's start with the regulated state and what that feels like. When you're calm, brain activity is even and it's driving body responses and emotions in an even and predictable way. But when strong emotions trigger dysregulation, it can feel like a bad chemical just started running through your body. And I've noticed it feels a little bit like a migraine coming on. If you get migraines, there's a moment where you know it's coming and it's too late to turn back. Dysregulation is like that. Or sometimes it feels like I've never had a seizure, but it's what I imagine a seizure feels like right before it starts, like something is starting to rise up in your nervous system and it's getting ready to kind of take over. Your thinking changes and you can go into reactivity. You might withdraw and go silent or get confused and blurt things out or panic. And it's hard to perceive accurately what's going on in those moments, like, wait a minute, what just happened? And you might totally misread whether another person is angry or not, or dangerous or safe, and you can't tell whether your words and actions are appropriate to the situation. And sometimes you don't get perspective on what was really happening until days later. So the trick to noticing dysregulation is to recognize the signs, and they might be a little different in different people. So here are some clues. You feel spaced out. You're at a loss for words. You can't remember where you are. You feel scattered. You're trying to do a lot of things at once, but you're finishing nothing. You're tripping over things, dropping things, losing things, your keys, your purse. Your voice and facial expression go flat, or you're in a rage, or you feel a huge urgency to express what is bothering you. You can't feel parts of your body. You can't feel hands, mouth, face, nose, feet, for example. And dysregulation often begins with a flood of emotion. You get very upset or scared from something that's said or something that happens. But sometimes the trigger isn't anything that you notice. It could be your hormones or a feeling of exhaustion or just waking up in the morning. That could set it off. Setting off, by the way, that's what we call a trigger. And we're not using trigger in the common sense of the word that a lot of people use for upset. I'm talking about something that happens that sets off neurological dysregulation. You can see why it's hard to control your dysregulation at first. So that's what it's like to be dysregulated. The most important question is, what can you do to re-regulate as quickly as possible and stay regulated? So first, notice you're dysregulated. If you can do this one thing, you can control your negative impulses and give yourself the time and space to re-regulate before you begin saying anything or doing anything that could be destructive. Are you flooding with emotion? Are you going numb? Say to yourself, I'm getting dysregulated. Number 2, be safe. This is not a good time to drive a car. You should pull over. I'm serious. And take your time. Don't go running into a crosswalk or try to use heavy equipment. Give all your focus to getting yourself into a physically safe place where you can pause and re-regulate. Number 3, if you are threatened with violence, some of this is not going to apply. So just return all your focus to getting yourself into a physically safe place, whatever it takes. Number 4, if what triggered you was an argument, instead of escalating the fight, you can use gentle words to stop the interaction, at least temporarily. Like you can say, I want to continue this conversation, but I need to take a breather to calm down. Or if you don't want to tell the other person that you're triggered, tell them you need a bathroom break. Or if you're on the phone, say you have a call on the other line, and then call them back later. When you need to step back from a situation, you don't have to get into a big discussion about it. Because remember, talking about it can actually make dysregulation worse. So just find a way to put the conversation on pause.
I've got a quick invite for you. I made a free daily practice course that shows you 2 simple techniques to calm the storm when you're triggered inside. It's short, it's powerful, and it helps you feel clearer, more focused, and more at ease, fast. Click the second link in the description section below, or use the QR code right there, and you can start your course right away.
Number 6, then buy some time. Separate from the other person if you can. Go to a room by yourself. Even if it's the bathroom or a car, no one has to know what you're doing. If it feels urgent to express yourself, maybe you want to lash out, take even longer before you try to resolve anything. Number 7 is a quick technique. Stamp your feet on the floor. You'd be amazed how helpful it is to bring yourself back into present time, into your body. And as you stamp each foot, you can say quietly to yourself, right, left, right, left. And this helps your brain begin to re-regulate. Number 8 is take 10 deep breaths, focusing on the out breath, if you like. Some people say that's more relaxing and engages the parasympathetic nervous system. Number 9, another measure that you can take that no one knows you're doing is you can press your tongue to the back of your teeth like that. It just, again, it helps you get into your body. Along the same lines, you can sit down and feel the weight of your butt in the chair. This is one more way to get back inside your body. So 11 is sometimes what you need is something to eat. When you're stressed, you'll probably crave carbohydrates and sugar, but it's protein foods that will help you get grounded again. Drink some water. Number 12, if you need some comfort, you can wash your hands and feel the water and soap on your hands. Warm water is extra calming. 13 is, if you have a trusty friend with you, you can get a good squeezing hug. It can really help re-regulate your brain to have that. But if no one is around or you don't feel like being touched, you can try pressing your back into the corner where the walls are right behind you. Just press yourself into the corner, wrap your arms around yourself so that you can feel pressure all around your torso. We're wired to calm down when we're hugged. And that's it. You now have a whole bunch of things that you can do when you notice you're dysregulated. And at the end of this video, I'll give you a link to a download where it's all written down so you can keep those tips with you. Now, some people ask, is medication helpful for treating dysregulation? Some researchers have said yes, some say no, but given that we now know that the underlying problem with a lot of childhood PTSD symptoms, it's not a chemical imbalance per se, that's corrected by the introduction of chemicals. Rather, it's brain dysregulation. So there's evidence that some medications can actually do more harm than good. And one of the reasons may be that they interfere with our natural ability to re-regulate after a period of dysregulation. So if you think about it, everybody gets dysregulated sometimes, and everyone eventually re-regulates. With CPTSD, we tend to get dysregulated more often and for longer periods of time. So the goal is to learn to re-regulate as soon as you notice it and then to stay regulated more of the time. That's the first part of the solution. The second part, then, with your nice, fresh, regulated mind, is to work on the behaviors and circumstances that flowed out of you living your life dysregulated all this time. The childhood trauma happened, and you definitely were affected, but this is the stuff that holds you back now, the dysregulation and the self-defeating behaviors. So that's the essence of what I teach in my courses and coaching programs, and my upcoming book, Learn to Re-regulate Your Brain and Emotions, and I teach people how to do that. And while it's important to acknowledge what happened to you and get some support for that, the real work of healing is going to be the healing of life problems that are holding you back today. The trauma-driven habits, the behaviors, the reactions you have. Focus on right now and take steps to grow into being your real self, because you were made to be something much more than someone who struggles all the time. And we need you. If you can master re-regulation, you can then have all this space in your life and possibility. You can meet people You can try things, you can quit things, you can make a positive difference in the world. That's where happiness comes from. And these all become choices when you learn to re-regulate. You can do what you love, you can choose what you want to spend time thinking about. It's a good way of life.
If you're having a hard time right now, emotionally, if you're feeling really angry, really sad, really scared right now about things going on in your life, or you're just really stressed and you're feeling overwhelmed, it's going around, right? I have a technique that I can show you in just 15 minutes that can help you take those negative emotions and bring them back down where they're a little easier for you. I can't make all your problems go away, but I can show you how to take the intensity of your thinking and bring it back to where you have more comfort and you have more space to think and make choices in your life. In this video, I'm teaching you the core technique that I teach in a free online course, but I'm putting it out here on YouTube right now because I noticed so many people need it. I just want to make it as easy as pie for you to learn this writing technique that literally saved my life 27 years ago. This is what I call the daily practice. I'm going to show you real fast, and I'm going to teach you about why it seems to help, all right? So if you'd like to follow along with me, I'm going to demonstrate it. You can follow along. Go get some paper and a pen. And I'm going to invite you to write down your fears and resentments. And I'm going to give you the format. And it goes like this. I have fear. So you write, I have fear. See how I did? And then go ahead and complete that. So what is the first fear that you have that comes into your mind? You don't have to go into the past, just like what's on your mind right now, what are you worried about? For me, I'm going to make one up so for the point of teaching that's going to give me a good example to show you. So let's try this. I have fear the neighbor graffitied my wall. That didn't really happen, but it's kind of fun to think about. He's like 90 years old. All right, but as an example, that could have happened. I have fear that my neighbor graffitied my wall. Now I'm going to hang out with that fear for a minute and go, yeah, what's the fear about that? Fear he won't admit it. Fear he hates me. Fear all the neighbors hate me. Fear now the house looks trashy. Fear the landlord is going to make me pay for it. Fear that this always happens to me, that I live somewhere and the place gets trashed. So that's an example of how there's just sort of a little cascade of 6 or 7 fears that come out of the first fear, which is I have fear the neighbor is the one who graffitied on the wall. So as I'm writing, I might notice that I actually have resentment. So let's take this example again. I'm resentful at the other neighbor across the street because I have fear that they are chummy with the neighbor who I think graffitied. Fear they get together all the time. And fear they exclude me. Now let's go back. You notice when I said I have resentment, and here's my writing, again, just scribbly scrabbly. This is not a perfect list. They're not columns or anything. When I said I had resentment, it was because I noticed it's like I have a lingering kind of anger. I'm stewing on it. I'm ruminating on it. So you pick a target, and it's going to be usually a person or a group of people or a category of people or maybe a country or an organization or something that used to be part of like my elementary school, okay? So you name the target. So I'm resentful at the other neighbor across the street, and instead of immediately writing why, because she's chummy with the neighbor who I think graffitied, I write because I have fear she is chummy with the neighbor, and fear they hang out all the time, and fear they talk about me behind my back, and fear I'm never invited. All right, so it turns out there was more fear there about this whole thing, but it was sort of hiding underneath this resentment, like, oh, that neighbor across the street, I'm resentful at her. So I keep writing. I mean, every time you sit down to write, you could take 10 or 15 minutes anytime. I've done it even faster when I had to. But you write ideally until you feel better. And I will just say that sometimes feeling better has meant 20 pages. And the reason I'm making this video today is because yesterday I was really feeling bad about something that had happened. And so I went ahead and I wrote for a long time. And it ended up being 20 pages, just 20 of these pages. Front was 1 page, back was 1 page. And I felt so much better because I got underneath to what was bothering me. So when I'm sitting down to write, I might have some very intense fears, fear I have cancer, fear that's what this pain is.
I don't actually fear I have cancer, just in case you're worried, but that would be a typical, like, intense fear that you have. You might also have fears that are very trivial. So fear, I've run out of lettuce. And then I'm resentful at my husband because I have fear I asked him to buy lettuce yesterday and he didn't. So sometimes these resentments are really petty, sometimes they're profound, but when we're writing them in the daily practice, they're all just fodder for getting free. So every thought that's troubling your mind goes onto the paper so you can get free. And the metaphor that I often use for this is, think of leaves, wet leaves that stick to the windshield of a car, right? So it's raining outside, it's autumn, the leaves are falling, there's all these leaves caked up on your windshield and you can't see. And that's what your fearful and resentful thoughts are like. They just arrive, they come, it's normal, it's natural, you get these thoughts, but they get stuck on your windshield, and if they're there, you can't see. And you can run your windshield wipers and nothing happens, they're just stuck. So you get out and you pick those leaves off, right? So think of those as fears and resentments. You pick them off, you throw them down. Pick them off, throw them down. You don't have to study them, you don't have to put them in a scrapbook, you don't have to look them up in the encyclopedia to find out what kind of tree it is. You're just going to get them off the windshield, and then you can see more clearly and you can move forward. That's my favorite metaphor for what this writing is like. So when you've written for a while and you begin to feel better, like, got that out, because it does feel good to get it out on paper. We're not dwelling on it, remember. You're not focusing on the negative. You're basically taking the negative thoughts that are already there and writing them down so you can stop thinking about them, which is the same reason we ever take notes, right? If somebody tells you their phone number and you're trying to remember it, but you have nowhere to, like, put it in your phone or write it down, you're going to have to say it over and over and over again in your mind. 526 or 741, 526. You write it down, there. Now you can stop thinking about it. So that's the very simple means that you can start to take your negative thoughts and get them onto paper. Now, this is not an exercise to pretend negative stuff doesn't exist. You're not forcing yourself to think positively. It's nothing like that. All you're doing is just kind of admitting to yourself, I've got this dark thought, I've got this negative thought, I've got this bad feeling, this is fear this, fear that, I'm resentful at so-and-so because. So you're just writing it down. Now, the easiest thing about it is you don't have to do anything about these thoughts. All you do is you write a sign-off. And depending on what your belief system is, this can be something like a prayer where you ask God to remove it, or you can just write an intention to release the fears and resentments. And I'll give you a little example of how it goes. All right, if you'd like to do a non-God version and you want to release it, it would go something like this. I am now ready and sincerely intend to release these fears and resentments. I seek only to know my next steps and to be strong enough to carry them out. And then write love and your name. Okay, that's the non-God version. I started out doing it something like that. I became somebody who believes in God. So this is how I write it. I write it the way the person who showed me. And I write, I am now ready and ask that you, God, remove these fears and resentments. I ask only for knowledge of your will for us and the power to carry it out. Love, Anna. Now, I've been doing this twice a day for 27 years. I've missed some days here and there. And in fact, I spent 2 years not doing it at all because I just felt like, what's the point? And then I found out that I do so much better. My mind is so much clearer. I'm so much more confident. I'm so much less affected by the symptoms of my own PTSD. I had a traumatic childhood. And I didn't have a word for what my symptoms were back then. The way I used to get so discombobulated, the way I used to emotionally overreact to things when I was upset, get spaced out, I had trouble remembering things. That's dysregulation. So that's a brain state that's really common for people who were abused and neglected as kids. And it's also common for people with ADHD or people who have been through a recent trauma. It's really hard to focus your mind. And during that state, whether it's actual PTSD and you were diagnosed with it, or you think you have it, or you're just finding that you're having a lot of kind of like emotional flashbacks and you're having a hard time and you're stressed, this technique is just simple and easy, where you name the troubling thoughts, always lumping them in the category of either fear or resentment. You get them on paper and you ask them for them to be removed.
So you may have noticed that in the way that I sign off, there's inflections of the 12 steps. And that's because I learned this technique from a woman who was sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, and she and her friends were using this as a way to stay sober. When she met me and I was going through the worst night of my life 27 years ago, I knew I couldn't think straight. I was intensely upset. I was feeling like I was at the end of my rope and that I couldn't go on. I was crying. I couldn't stop. I felt like the world was against me. And she showed me this technique and all that emotion calmed down. And not only that, and I will say at this time, I had a head injury at the time. I had been attacked on the street not that long before this happened. And I was having a really hard time focusing or reading, and it was making all my symptoms worse. We now know that these symptoms of feeling discombobulated, numb, overreactive, clumsy, can't remember, can't learn, there's actually a lot of physical symptoms that go with it too. It can increase your risk for autoimmune diseases, heart disease, cancer. Dysregulation is a very serious thing, and it's a brain state that often follows abuse. If a person has been abused or neglected in childhood, there is often dysregulation, and it's been often misdiagnosed as a learning disability or ADHD. I mean, it could be those things, but so often it's complex PTSD. That's the kind that comes from a chronic exposure to intense stress. A lot of us had it as kids. Childhood trauma is the most common reason that people develop CPTSD. And until recently, there wasn't really a name for it, and there definitely wasn't a very good solution for it. If you ever sought help for your PTSD, you may have been told that you need to talk about the trauma that happened. And if you're like me, sitting there and talking about trauma is actually very re-traumatizing. So I spent a lot of years going to therapy, trying to be helped, and getting very dysregulated in the chair there, getting so flustered and kind of out of my body that I could barely write a check at the end. When my friend showed me this technique, I had a way that I could communicate what was bothering me. I could write it, get it out on paper. Turns out talking is a brain pathway that often can set off that re-triggering of the trauma. Writing about it goes a different way. It's a roundabout way towards expressing what happened. And you can then, if you choose, read what you wrote to another person if you want to communicate it, and it's a lot less triggering. So when you're less triggered, when that trauma button hasn't been pushed, you are much more able to work on whatever is troubling you. You can make decisions, you can make a plan for what you want to do that's better. Those are all things that are extremely difficult to do when you're dysregulated. So if you're somebody who has spent a lot of your life dysregulated, if that's beginning to ring a bell, I'm going to put information down below. I have a quiz, are you dysregulated? I have another quiz, do you have CPTSD? Those will all be down there. You can take the quizzes and see if you resonate with them. But this technique of writing your fears and resentments and following it with a sign-off for about 15 minutes a day, the only way you're going to find out if it works for you is to try it. So I'm going to invite you to do that. Now, you probably had a hard time writing all of this because I was talking the whole time, huh? So if you want an easier, quieter way to learn how to write it, I've written up the instructions. It's in a PDF. I teach you how to do the writing. And as a bonus, I teach you also how to do a very simple form of meditation after you write so you can rest. So you get those distressing thoughts out onto the paper, and then you rest in meditation. And if you're like me, you will be amazed how powerful this is to clear your mind a little bit. I mean, clarity, doesn't that sound good? Feeling a little clearer, a little calmer. When you're clear and calm, you can take productive action to change your life. Everything gets easier. Okay, so some of the common questions that people give me about this. What do I do with the paper when I'm done? There's two things you can do. One is throw it away. Mostly I recommend you throw it away. You throw it away immediately and you shred it. This is not something you want to leave around for loved ones to read, where you're writing your deep, dark thoughts. And some of them would really hurt other people's feelings, like, fear, I don't even like my husband, or fear, I should run away. These are your dark thoughts. They're not really your plan. They're the dark thoughts that you're putting on paper so that you can be free of them. And in fact, the more honest you can be with yourself on paper, the freer you can be. You can shred it, you can dunk it in water, do whatever you need to do, but don't leave it lying around. There's no point to that. You also don't want to keep it. You don't want to write it in a fancy journal. It's not a journal, in fact. So no fancy paper, just scratch paper. It's not to keep, and you definitely don't want to go read it again on some other day. It's not a commemoration. A journal is where you record things that happened that you might want to remember or you might want to analyze later or look for patterns. This isn't that. This is like just sweeping out the trash. Let's say you cut your toenails on the kitchen floor and you're going to just sweep it up and get it out of the house.
It takes strength to end a breadcrumb relationship. That's when you're with someone who gives you just enough communication and affection to keep you hooked into them, and nothing more. And ending that kind of relationship is a no-brainer when you're working to transform your life. But what about when you're in a crisis? Should you just take any love you can get or risk losing the only bits of support you've got from someone who's kind of maybe in your life? My letter today is from a woman I'll call Marcia, and she writes, "Dear Fairy, I'm 43 years old and I currently am undergoing treatment for stage 2 breast cancer."
Hey, it's me, and real fast, if you're watching my videos and wondering if maybe past trauma is having an effect on your life today, I want to share with you a list of signs that what you're struggling with now might be connected with neglect or abuse in your childhood. It's good to know this because it can help you know that what's hard for you right now is normal and that healing is possible. You can download my Signs of Childhood PTSD quiz by clicking the top link in the description section below or using that QR code right there.
I'm struggling with setting boundaries with an ex. I was traumatized as a child by an abusive stepfather. I was raised by a hypocritical, narcissistic, aloof grandmother that put men in my family on a pedestal. And I was also raised by a workaholic, non-affectionate mother. My real father was estranged. I showed up for myself, but I struggled. I remembered asking myself, why doesn't anyone love me? I've got my fairy pencil, by the way. I'm circling things I want to come back to on a second reading. I got really kind of swept away about the cancer. All right, so Marcia says, it's like no matter what I did, history kept repeating itself with everything in my life. I isolated myself because the pain was just unbearable. Eventually, I decided to cut all family off. I had a child at 19, and that was extremely hard, as I was a child myself. I had not dealt with the painful trauma and abandonment of the past, only to result in my child's father also abandoning us. I kept masking my pain. 4 years ago, in my late 30s, I fell in love for the first time, and I had my heart broken. Little did I know that this man, who wasn't even my boyfriend, would serve as a catalyst to begin my self-development healing journey. All right, I'm putting a question mark by that because I'm not sure what you mean. I wasn't myself with him because I was codependent, needy, jealous, anxious, you name it. Old wounds of not being worthy of love or to be loved. Not one single person that ever raised me ever gave me affection. Oh my goodness. So why did I love this guy? I cried myself to sleep for months, and all I could think was, love yourself. Through the tears and programming, my triggers, going within to self-regulate my nervous system, I did everything and anything to overcome what happened and become myself. And I did it, she says. I was in the best shape of my life, physically and mentally, emotionally too. So I thought. As I sat in the doctor's office waiting for my mammogram results, I was diagnosed with stage 2 cancer, breast cancer. I reached out to my mother after years of no contact. She's been by my side with no ounce of negativity and has given so much affection and love. Wow. Wow. However, the man that I love, he does not know that I love him as I hide it, came back too. There's no support, no love, barely any affection unless he wants intimacy. And by that, I think you mean sex. Although I'm battling cancer, there's this hideous label of being a friend with benefits. Yeah, of course. I'm so proud of myself for my outlook on my cancer treatment and healing. He's seen my transformation and transparency. I'm disappointed that I do not cut off a man that does not see me in his future, that every time he comes and goes, I allow it. It makes me so mad as I'm the one not establishing my boundaries and I don't cut him off. It's like I can say no to everyone except him. This is the first time I'm being honest about him with myself. Does he love me or feel sorry for me? No. Yet I stay. Please provide guidance as to why the obsession with him. I'm exhausted. All right, Marcia, I've got your back, honey. I do. All right, it's okay. You know what? You have cancer. So, like, if this happened, yeah, that's what we do. That's what we do. So I'm so glad you caught it at stage 2. It sounds like it's hopeful. I really hope it is. But I know it must be like a big thing for you to deal with and confront, and it would shake your life. And already I hear you making like positive changes. You're really questioning this crap fit relationship that you've had in your life for a while. It is not what you want. It doesn't make you feel good. So yes, I said crap fit. For anybody who has never learned that word, crap fit. We fit ourselves to crap. And it's a survival technique that we learn as kids when we had to deal with terrible situations, unacceptable people. And we learn to fit ourselves to it, to just carry on and survive. But when you take that into adulthood, you can end up being too good at fitting yourself to somebody. This guy, he just comes and like takes sex and leaves and doesn't care about you. So, you know, you say, why do I do this? Why do I do this? And you have all this shame. It's the same reason everybody does. It's just like we want love. We want love so much. And so sometimes we'll just crap fit a little bit to get something that feels something like love, even though then the big emptiness comes afterwards where it's clear like it wasn't love. It doesn't involve hanging out together, making a plan, having something to do on Saturday, and all those things that are just so disappointing to lose. I'm sorry you're going through that. I thought a lot about what you were asking, though, because at first I was like, I don't know, maybe just to get through the cancer, you just hang on to somebody who's like, you know, I don't know, just like a comforter. But no, it makes you feel sad and it makes you lose your integrity. So I'm really not for keeping this relationship. I can't get over the feeling that you having cancer is an opportunity. You know, every once in a while, trauma can actually cause our immune system to get out of whack. That happened to me. It can exacerbate your risk. Some people say it could actually cause the cancer. I don't know if we have to go there, but I do know that you healing your trauma gives you your best physical and emotional and psychological and spiritual strength to overcome the cancer that you have right now. Because that's really what your body has to do. Like, there's these cancer cells and your body has to rise up and take care of it and just like get rid of it. So that's your mission right now. And everything that strengthens you is good. Now, this thing about your mother that you reached out to her after all you went through, and she showed up for you and she's been positive and helpful. So first of all, not to be a naysayer, but just in case she ever like does her old thing one day, see if you can give her a little bit of a grace period on it, because it'll be sort of amazing if she can not show her old colors. Hopefully, though, this is primarily how she is now, just loving and helpful. I want you to survive this cancer, no problem, with your body intact. And then I want you to enjoy the incredible gift it brought you. That your mom all of a sudden showed up for you. You know, your mom not being there for you with everything you went through, that's a huge trauma wound. Very few people get the chance to sort of heal that afterwards. I don't think you have to force it. You don't have to make yourself have conversations. I just have a feeling that this is going to come naturally to you. And you just have a chance to set something right with your mom. I mean, she's the one who needs to set something right. But you have a chance now to get that love that you didn't get before. I'm so happy for you. And I hope it goes really well. This guy, he's a distraction. He's a distraction. And he's hurting your integrity. He's making you feel ashamed of yourself. I mean, he's not, but the decision to keep seeing him is making you feel ashamed of yourself. It's not really what you want. So I'm just going to encourage you, like, you actually don't need sex right now. And that's all he's got for you. You don't need that. You need people who like bring food and love you and care about you and rub your feet and help you when things are kind of icky and involve drives to the hospital and chemo or whatever it is you're doing. You know, I've been through other people's cancer with them. It's a big loving act. It's not somebody who just stops in for sex. I can see the appeal. I think, you know, I can see the appeal and I just say, you know, I'm glad you got a little of that. But now it's like your integrity, your sense of dignity is crying out to you going, you know, I think I want to live on a better basis. And I just want to encourage you 100%. Yeah, do that. Do that. Gently let that relationship go. You're making room for one day, perhaps a new relationship to come in. And then you won't have that feeling of shame. When it comes to healing trauma, shame is really poisonous. Shame is poisonous. And so, there's a school of thought that goes, oh, well, shame is just stupid and pointless and you just shouldn't have it. But sometimes we feel shame because we're doing something that's inconsistent with our own moral values. And that's what I hear you saying. So when you get consistent with your own moral values, there's just like this good light in you, a good energy. And you need that. You need that. You need to get right with yourself. It's a good and powerful thing to do for your healing. Ooh, please tell us how you're doing in the future. And if people are watching this, I want to give you a little talk, a little pep talk that sometimes when you make a big change, like dropping a toxic relationship, a lot of emotions come up. This is the time also for being ill, scared about your life, trying to deal with a return to relationship with your mother, all the stuff that you're going through and so many of our people here are going through. This is the time to support yourself with a way to process your thoughts and feelings about just life's ups and downs, all of these experiences, so that you can hang in there. You don't have to shut everything down or go get drunk or yell or anything like that. You can actually hang in there and keep experiencing your life and making good choices about what you want to do next.
When my son was just 3 years old, I accidentally dislocated his elbow in public. And I didn't even know I'd done it. And I'm telling you this because I want to talk about the challenges of parenting while we're dysregulated, and a great strategy to help yourself and your child to re-regulate. So this elbow thing happened on BART, which is the subway system here in the San Francisco Bay Area where I live. And I was riding with him at rush hour, and he had been absolutely screaming, demanding that the other passengers, and they had seats, he wanted them to get up so that we, who did not have seats, could sit down. And he would not shut up. He was like, I want to sit there. I did that hissing mama shush thing. I was like, shh. I was like mortified. And I tried offering him raisins, and I tried reasoning with him, and I tried to distract him with a story, but he kept screaming and struggling. And I was holding on to the bar that runs along the ceiling with one hand, and with the other I was like holding on to his little sticky hand and trying to keep him upright on his feet, but I couldn't control him. And he flung himself to the floor, and he was kicking and thrashing and screaming even louder. And when people are watching, like right now on BART in that situation, I was getting really overwhelmed, and I had this big backpack on my back to carry, and my hair was in my eyes, and my glasses were falling off my nose, and I was ashamed, and I couldn't control him, and I was just imagining that everyone was hating us. And I didn't have a word for it then, but I became deeply dysregulated. And this is a super red flag zone for parents. I felt desperate and clumsy, and I couldn't see any options. So I grabbed my son's hand and I yanked him to his feet and held onto him like shackles, all the way home to our stop. So when we drove from the station to our house, he was quiet as a mouse back there. And when I took him out of his car seat, I noticed his face seemed kind of gray. And then over dinner, I finally noticed he wasn't using his arm. It took me so long to notice. So I called the advice nurse, and she said I needed to bring him to the emergency room. And at the emergency room, the pediatrician asked if anyone had swung my son around that day or yanked him by the arm. Well, I had never been more ashamed, and I had to tell her what had happened, and I told her, yeah, I yanked him. And she surprised me, and she told me, don't worry, this happens all the time. It's called nursemaid's elbow, and I guess it's named after nursemaids who took care of naughty kids. And she showed me how to fix it. You kind of like shake the kid's hand and put your hand on the top and then hold their elbow and pop it back in. So that night in the ER, I confessed to the doctor that I really had no idea how to control my son. And he was at the age where he was really testing the limits. And I was afraid to discipline him wrong. I realized that my most angry mom behavior came out when I was afraid what other people were thinking. The preschool teachers, the other parents, the people on the train. She told me about this book called 1, 2, 3 Magic, and I wanted to get it so fast that I just went out and bought the video that night. This tape was amazing. Here's the deal. When your kid is doing something bad, or if they're refusing to do something you want them to do, you say, get up off the floor of this train and stand with me here. All right, you can't do this yelling, which is the number one mistake parents make. And you can't talk too much, which is the second mistake parents make all the time. They go, well, come on, honey, stand up. You're being really bad. Did you hear me? I'm not going to ask you again. So instead you say, plain and simple, get up off the floor
and stand here quietly. I'm going to count to 3, and if you're not on your feet and standing quietly, then consequence. Now, the consequences part is very important because this is the third most common mistake parents make when disciplining. They haven't thought in advance about appropriate consequences. So they just pull one out of the air in the heat of the moment, and it can end up being something way too extreme or one you can't actually follow through on. My mother once told my sister that she was grounded. How long? Forever. And we just laughed. So you think about your consequences in advance and keep them handy in your mind to pull out and wield in moments of discipline. Now, according to 1-2-3 Magic, consistent discipline makes kids feel happy and secure, and it makes parents feel confident and less stressed. But here's the hard part. You have to follow through. I got the chance to try 1-2-3 Magic that weekend. The movie Finding Nemo came out, and I had promised my son that we'd see it on opening night. So we got a babysitter for his little brother, and we went to the theater early, just the two of us, to beat the crowds. And we got our tickets, and then there was this long line outside winding around the theater. So my son saw this, and remember, he's only 3, and he began to throw a tantrum. He wanted to go in the movie theater now, and I explained, no, we have to wait, other people in our seats, soon it'll be our turn. But no, he threw himself to the ground screaming. So I said, get up on your feet now. I'm going to count to 3, and if you're not standing quietly by my side, we're not going to the movie. 1. And he just kept screaming. And I didn't fill the silence with talking, but I was worried because I really wanted to see the movie. 2. Yep, still screaming. Oh, I didn't want to do this, but I had to say it. 3. And he just kept laying on the ground screaming. So I told him, now we're going to go return our tickets and get our money back and go home. Well, that got him to his feet. He was shocked. He followed me to the ticket window, begging me, no, Mama, please, I'm sorry, I'll be good, I can wait in line, please. And he was crying and pitiful, and I imagine the other parents thought I was this cruel mother, jamming myself up to the ticket window with this sad little boy begging to see Nemo. I felt like it was going to kill me, but I did it anyway. I returned the tickets, we got in the car, my son was sobbing, we went back to the babysitter to pick up his little brother and drove home. And you know what? By the time we got home, he had forgotten all about it. He was happy. And just like the video said, he seemed to like having clear rules that were enforced. And I was bummed about missing the movie, but I wasn't dysregulated. So I kept using 1-2-3 Magic, and I'd say to him, I'm going to count to 3, and if I get to 3 and you still haven't fill in the blank here, then insert consequence. And my son's an adult now. But when he was a kid, there were many times I had to warn him and his brother that I was counting to 3. 1, 2, they make fun of me for this. But after that terrible night back in 2003 at the movie, I never had to get to 3 again. Magic.
I've got this video lined up for you right here, and I will see you very soon.